Selina Ray Show on webseriesnetwork.com. My guest today is Reinaldo Robinson, a photographer, a local photographer in Los Angeles and New York City. And today, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. Thank you for being here to show us a little bit about how to take a good picture.
What? I don't do that.
Yeah, I know. We've heard that rumor, but today you will give me some pointers on how to do that, and you at home as well. Okay, how are you today?
I'm doing great.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day in LA.
Exactly, great to be in LA. Left New York because it's like this.
Mm-hmm. So how long have you been in Los Angeles?
I've been in Los Angeles probably, I think, like 16 years.
Okay.
Something like that. So I love it here. It's nice weather. I still get to go back and forth, so that's kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Get to visit relatives and shoot stuff while I'm in New York. I still have a bunch of friends there that still shoot and have studios, and so that's always fun. But I love to come back to LA because I was just there in October and it was cold when I was there. And I got home and it was like, wee, back in LA.
All right, we love it. Well, we live here, we love it. And when you're shooting, I mean, and you've been a professional photographer for how long?
I have to say, really?
Yeah, well, no. You don't have
no,
a
it's probably,
long time?
well, I mean, I started in New York assisting, and that was 87, 88.
Okay.
And I've probably been going with that since then. So between assisting and shooting my own stuff, at least 20 years.
Okay, cool. And when you shoot, do you shoot subjects like people? Or, I mean, do you landscapes?
I do mainly people.
Okay.
At this point, I'm doing mostly beauty and fashion, and then doing musicians, because those are probably my two passions. Actually, well, musicians, being a musician myself, a former musician. I guess I'm still a musician, I still do stuff.
Yeah.
But those are my two things that I love doing, is music and fashion and beauty. Beauty I've actually just gotten into recently, and I have a makeup artist that I work with, Liza McElwelly. I'm going to plug her.
Okay.
Because she's great. I've been with Liza forever. And she was like, we got to start doing more beauty stuff because I love when you do beauty stuff. So I've started doing beauty stuff because it's a lot of fun. And like the music, it's kind of challenging. So.
Cool. Well, because you're working with different faces and different personalities and
all of the above.
Right.
I like the interaction that I get to have with people when I'm shooting them. It's not just there's the technical aspect, but there's also, like, I do research before I shoot people, especially if I'm shooting celebrities or someone that I'm doing an environmental portrait. I like to know stuff about them because that actually helps me when I go to photograph them, so I know what I can talk about and sometimes what I can't talk about. So.
Oh, yep. That's how it
Because
works, right?
occasionally that will get you in trouble too, and that will have certain people walking off of sets. So it's a delicate dance, but it's fascinating when you get to shoot people and you get to learn stuff about them. And I always love to study people, whether it be through the lens or just having a conversation with them and seeing what makes them tick and why they do what they do.
Mm-hmm. And so eliciting kind of the emotion out of them. When you're photographing, it's for specific purposes, right? Whether it's for print, right, or the web. Do you do any work for the web?
I do work for anything that pays right now.
Okay.
So,
well.
But if someone wants to do, and for me, I don't really differentiate between the web. I mean, I'm trying to create an image, and if someone wants to portray something, then it's my job, whether it's going to be put on the web or it's going to be on an album cover or a CD cover at this point. I'm just trying to create an image of trying to get in their head and find out, because everyone the way people see themselves and the way that they actually look in photographs a lot of times is two different things.
Really?
And so I know, even for myself personally, like when I have my picture taken, I'm like, really, I look like that? So you kind of want to get in people's head and find out what their vision is of themselves, and so that the two kind of come considerably closer. Because sometimes people are totally out of their minds. It's like, no, that is nothing what you look like. Okay, I'm gonna show you right now But I mean, you want to get as close to their vision as possible.
Right, right, and
so that they're happy with their end result.
Right, because we all want to look our best,
Exactly.
and so we hire a professional photographer to help us, or to elicit that out of ourselves,
Exactly.
And with different angles, right, and
Right.
the kind of the way lighting is. We were talking about that earlier about, making sure when you're lighting someone. So let's say we're out in this environment now. The challenge here out in nature. What is the challenge?
For the most part, in a situation like this, the challenge is exposure. Making sure, because the light that's hitting us and the light that's out there, the hard raw light, there's probably a 3 or 4 stop difference there, and a lot of cameras can't compress that kind of range. So you have to make sure that your exposure is based on what's here, because the meter reads everything, so it's reading what's the brightness out there, it's reading the brightness in here, and most cameras are going to go expose properly for the brightness out there. So what's going to happen is we're going to look like we're in a dark hole somewhere.
Okay.
And so you want to bring those two, that light and this light, as close as possible, without getting too technical.
Right, and you can do that how? Like if you just have a basic, camera with a flash, let's say, right? What would you have the flash on?
I would have the flash on for a situation like this. If the cameras, you would do a shot obviously, and then you'd see, it's not really looking that great. So then I would turn my flash on, and I can actually demonstrate that for you just so that people don't get discouraged and say, oh, well, he has all this professional equipment. No, we're going to do this with a cell phone camera. And what we're going to do is, I believe, on photo. Great. That's a great place to start. So what we're going to do is I'm going to turn my flash off. And we're going to see what it looks like. I don't know what my framing is on this, because we're just kind of going. So, just as I thought, the background is nicely exposed, but you are dark. You are darkness. So, darkness. So, we're going to go in here, throw the flash on, and I'm just going to leave it on automatic. And we're going to try that.
Okay.
And the flash didn't go off. Which is part of the problem with a lot of cameras, is that on automatic. Now I'm going to put it on, and this is actually exactly what's going to happen for your viewers. They're going to do stuff like this, and that's exactly what's going to happen. On automatic, the camera's assuming that, oh, there's enough light here. It makes a really dark picture. So what we're going to do now is put it on flash, where it's going to flash no matter what, and we'll see a major difference.
Okay.
You say cheese. Oh, there we go. And it's better.
Actually, my face isn't blown out.
Exactly. Now, if I had real control over the flash, I could actually bump up the exposure on the flash and bring it actually close to that, and it would actually look pretty sweet. So that's the thing, is basic things that you can do with a camera, with your camera phone and stuff like that, that'll actually help you get better photographs. And a lot of the times too, it's composition. I mean, it's any number of things, but most of the people run into this. That's a pretty common problem, which is that their exposure is way off, especially in an environment like this where we're sitting in shade and there's bright sunlight behind us. The camera's normally going to have a tendency to go for that exposure.
Right. Well, I've been told recently, I've taken some pictures with my little digital camera, that I have a hard time framing people. Yeah. Like I don't see people like I want to I'm just trying to take a picture. I'm not a photographer. I have no idea. So what's the trick on framing? So say if you're going to do a portrait, are there tricks? Because I keep thinking that I don't see But that's not true, right? When you're looking through the camera, is the camera seeing everything that you're seeing?
Well, obviously your eye sees a considerably wider view. And so the trick is, after a while, is that you would, like if I have my 50 on, I have a sense in my head what the field of view is on my 50. So when I put the camera to my eye, when I'm looking at things, I'm cropping out all the extraneous stuff, and I'm trying to, in my head, as best as I can, give myself a 50 millimeter field of view. What happens with a lot of people is they see this great shot and it's like, oh, that looks great, and then they take the picture and they're disappointed because in their mind they saw all of this when in fact their lens only sees this. So that's where you have to get inside you have to know your equipment, and just have an idea in your head that, okay, my lens will only show this field of view, like 180 or 75 degree view. So I have to, in my head, I have to crop out everything else and just see that frame of view. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put, one of the things that you want to do, always make sure, like when you're taking someone's photograph, is that you want to have a clean head. So you don't want to have any poles or anything sticking up behind someone's head. So that's one thing to take into consideration. Where you put them at in the frame. Where you put them at in the frame conveys different things. This rule of thirds. You can put them off in the side of the frame and have them looking off, and then that gives a sense of thought. You leave some room above their head, that also creates a sense of thought, especially if they're looking down and they're kind of contemplative. So it's all a matter of where you put someone in the frame, what you have in the frame. What a lot of times, and most photographers will tell you, the most important thing is what you exclude from the frame, because that's really what creates a great picture. Like, you can see all this stuff, but when I go into especially, and that's one of the things that I love doing, is I love going to somewhere that I've never been, and like, okay, so how am I going to pull a great photo out of this? And being able to look around and go, okay, ooh, it'd be nice to have that behind them. And I'm going to shoot it shallow depth of field so that everything else goes mushy behind them. And it's just, it's a series of things that go on in your head. But probably for most beginners, the most important thing is just, one, make sure you don't have anything sticking up behind someone's head, a tree coming out of someone's head. That's probably one of the biggest. As far as landscapes, probably one of the biggest mistakes is that people don't have their horizon line straight. So you have, like, the horizon's like this.
That's me.
Exactly.
That's me.
Like I said, that's
I'm a little tilted.
That's one of the most. And then there are programs where you can actually correct that, and you can actually correct the perspective. But those are probably two of the most common made mistakes. And like I said, in portraiture, it's having something sticking up out of someone's head. In landscape photography, it's not having your horizon straight. So if you can conquer those two things, that's a great place to start. And then having your exposures right when you're doing portraits. And like I said, you want to make sure it's more about what you exclude from the frame.
Right.
So you can do things.
It's like the takeaway part, right?
Yeah.
Like you see the object, and then you try to find a way to photograph them by taking everything else away.
You want to isolate, and that makes a stronger portrait too, because sometimes people like to do things like, oh, I want to go here and do this here, and it gets busy. You don't know whether to look at the subject or to look at what's going around, and around them, and you can actually work where you do things that draw you in to the background but still keep your focus.
Right. Okay. We were talking earlier before we started shooting about perspective, right? I think it's really fascinating how, can you teach 5 people, okay, let's say 5 people to shoot one object and have it come out the exact same thing using the same equipment, or will there be different perspectives? There will never. You can't duplicate it, right?
You cannot duplicate. Even when you're attempting to duplicate something, like I assisted for umpteen years, and we do a lot of the car companies, because we'd shoot literally we'd shoot the car brochures that you go and get at the car dealership. And some years they would only change like minor things. One of the biggest challenges we always had was they'd say, okay, we want to redo this shot, but we want to do this side profile of the shot of the car, but we want to change the hubcap. Can you match that? And it doesn't matter how much we measured out everything, it was never exactly the same. So you can't even do it with measuring stuff out, let alone 5 different people who have 5 to. So yeah, to answer your question, no, and that's the beauty of it is that everyone has their own perspective, and you know you're gonna move. I can't tell you how many photographers I assisted when I was assisting, and you'd set it up and it would be perfect, and they would come and just go. Now you're thinking in your head, really? Like that didn't do anything. You know, that little 3 inches that you move, but for them that's their vision, and so yeah, to answer your question, no, everyone's gonna have their own take on it, because I even do that myself. Like people go, come over here just a little bit. My assistant, come here just a little bit.
Okay.
Because that's your mental fine tune.
Right. Well, and that's if you have a vision, right?
Yeah.
So when you start a project, you come, like you said, with research, understanding your client or your subject, right? Is that what you call them? Subjects. And then, right. Well, and then what do you do then, right? You come with that vision, so you find, using your creative talent, you know, the skill and the technique and the creativity, and create what you saw and what you see as the final project, right?
Yeah, and sometimes it becomes a melding, because there's always a point where you get up to this wall, and then it's like they come in, and it's like, okay, but yeah, I want to see. I was kind of thinking this, and that's why you want to do your. I mean, you always want to be prepared, not only equipment wise, you know, making sure that you have all the proper equipment to do the job that you're going to do, but you also want to be prepared, you know, mentally, and you want to, like I said before, you want to have a connection. Perfect example is I shot an artist who everyone knows. It was Tyrese, and I photographed Tyrese, and it was his alter ego, Black Tie. He did a rap album, and his alter ego was Black Tie. When I shot Tyrese, I did a week's worth of like going through his stuff and seeing visually what he had already done, and listening to the album. And I had, at the time, I was at Lowrider magazine, and we had a writer, Tanisha, and she apparently didn't do her homework. And what happened was, it was actually kind of funny, because I had explained to her what I do, like that I research people, and she just thought that was like, you're just taking the pictures. I'm like, you don't get it, do you? And it's like, she got it after, because what happened was she didn't do her homework, and she was actually interviewing him, so it was more important for her to do her homework. And Tyrese pretty much got really pissed because he asked her something about the album and she hadn't really listened to it, and he literally stopped the interview. He was like, you know what, you need to listen to the album first before we continue this. And it was funny, because I jumped in and just started talking about, oh yeah, I like this cut, and he was like, oh, that's cool, and he knew that that me and him were on the same page. So I saved myself. I look good, but she didn't look so good because she didn't do her homework. And you know, people think just because you're taking pictures that's all you do is you just take pictures. But no, you really need to know your subject, and that's really important. And if you don't know them, because there are going to be times when you photograph someone and it's just going to be kind of on the fly. Okay, can I take a picture? That for me is a fun part too, is that you getting to know someone and you're talking with them and like, hey, okay, oh, well, what do you do? And you're having this conversation. In having that conversation,
right.
You really get to kind of break them down a little bit and get them a little comfortable, get them comfortable with being in front of the camera and being with you. because it's pretty invasive actually. When you take someone's picture, if they're not used to it, it's really kind of oh my God, you're taking my picture. And your job as a photographer is to make sure that you make them comfortable.
Right. You want them to be comfortable. I know that I had a photo shoot, my very first one ever, in I think it was November. Oh, it was the most painful thing I've ever done in my life.
It is painful.
It was painful. I think they took like 450 pictures, and I was so uncomfortable. It took me. I booked the photo shoot in April, and I canceled it 3 times, or postponed it 3 times because I was nervous about being in front of the camera, and it was just something. There's a joke in my family that says that when the camera comes out, Selina disappears. There's no pictures of me anywhere. But it's funny that I'm doing this show now because I'm in front of the camera. So it's a great lesson for me to be seen and to have just let go of a lot of it, because it isn't always going to be perfect. But I want to take a good picture. I personally love to take good pictures, but I have been told often that I'm just not good at it, and so that's partly why I brought you in today, to kind of help us out, to kind of explain, demystify, perhaps. That's what this is a demystifying of taking a photograph.
Yeah, and there are, for a lot of people, a lot of mysteries about how you do what you do. When you're taking a photograph, like what do you look for? For me, it's intuitive now, because I go somewhere and I look, and as I'm looking in, and that's actually an exercise you can do with yourself, is as you're looking, like, what would make a good photograph? Like, is that an interesting shadow? Where's the light coming from? Like, for me, that's one of the things when I look at photographs in magazines, I go, okay, so where's the light coming from? For me, I like to, what do you call that, backwards?
Deconstruct?
Yeah, I like to deconstruct it, because I go in and I'm looking, okay, where's the light coming from? Where's the main light coming from? Is there a fill light? Is there a backlight? What type of light is it? Is it a large softbox? Is it a beauty dish? These are all things that go through my head as I'm looking at a photograph. And even if I'm looking at something outside, I'm looking at, where is the light coming from? Where was the sun at? Where were they in relationship to the sun? Where, what were they standing in? Were they standing in water looking back at the beach, or were they on the beach looking out at the water? So there's all these things that go through my head, and that's, for me, that's the fun part of doing photography, is reverse engineering it. You kind of go through, okay, this is the end product, so how did they get there? And that's actually one of the most fun things for me too, is doing photography. And when I first started, like coming into a bare studio and then setting up lights and having models and makeup artists and doing the photo shoot, and then you finish and you go back to a bare studio and you go, wow, that was cool. Just watching the whole, and that's why it's always interesting to watch time-lapse stuff too, because I did something for the magazine one year. We actually every year went to Vegas for our super show. That was the biggest show of the year. And one year I put 2 cameras up in the rafters, and it did a photo every 35 seconds or something for 4 days. And it was really cool to just watch the empty space, and then them moving the cars in, and then the vendors coming in, and then the actual show, and there's a lot of people walking around, and then you see it dwindle out, and then the cars moving out, and then it empty. And that was really cool. And that's the kind of thing, that's what I really like about photography, is just that, creating from nothing and then going back to having something and then going back to nothing.
Well, thank you so much. What do you have anything new coming up for you that you're going to be up to?
I'm actually trying to get into start directing. I guess everyone now is doing that, especially with the DSLRs being as popular as they are. I mean, they're being used on shows like House. I mean, most of the major, I have a couple of friends who are producers on like FX, and they're all using Canon 5D Mark IIs. They're all using DSLRs. That's like the new thing now. So I'm actually, and there's a lot of photographers who, her kind of floating into the video realm. So I'm working on a couple of projects that soon that I will have going on.
Cool.
And I'll share with you.
Right.
Right now they're still
still
in their infancy. So
well, thank you for taking the time today to sit with me and sit with us, have the conversation, and
my pleasure.
Share, kind of demystify some of the picture taking stuff. We'll see. I'll put up some pictures that after I've got some pointers now. I'll put some pictures up on my blog, and you can check them out. And I'll give Reinaldo just a big thanks. So thank you very much for watching, and you can watch us on June 7th on webseriesnetwork.com. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, Alan.